There is a quiet moment when uncertainty feels heavier than knowing. Screening isn't about expecting bad news. It is about preserving clarity, protecting independence, and choosing awareness over worry. For many seniors, prevention becomes less about fear and more about peace of mind. Understood. Below is only the full narration for Chapter 1, written to stand on its own while flowing naturally into the larger documentary. No labels inside the narration, no repetition, no instruction tone, just calm, reflective storytelling designed for seniors. There was a time when the body made itself very clear. Pain meant something was wrong. Fatigue meant rest was needed. Hunger, thirst, discomfort. Each arrived with enough force to be noticed and addressed. The body spoke plainly and the mind listened. Later in life, that clarity often softens. Not because the body stops communicating, but because it changes how it speaks. Signals become quieter, less specific. They blend into the background of everyday experience. What once felt like a clear message now feels like a vague sensation, easy to dismiss and even easier to normalize. Many seniors describe this as simply feeling fine. They are not sick, they are not in pain. They go about their days, manage their routines, meet their responsibilities. Life continues with a sense of steadiness. From the outside and often from the inside, everything appears to be in order. And yet, subtle changes are taking place. A bit more effort is required to focus. Fatigue arrives earlier in the day. Recovery from small stresses takes longer. Sleep feels lighter. Movement requires more intention. None of these changes feel dramatic enough to cause concern. They arrive gradually, quietly, woven into the fabric of normal life. Because they are gradual, they rarely raise questions. This is one of the great challenges of aging with dignity. The body adapts so well that it can mask early changes without ever sounding an alarm. It continues to function, but with less margin, less reserve, less tolerance for strain. From the inside, this does not feel like a problem. It feels like aging. Many seniors reach a point where the absence of symptoms becomes reassurance. If nothing hurts, if nothing feels wrong, then nothing must be wrong. This belief is understandable. It is rooted in decades of lived experience where symptoms were reliable guides, but the body does not always work that way anymore. With age, many conditions no longer announce themselves loudly at the beginning. They develop quietly without pain or obvious disruption. The body compensates, it adjusts. It works around small inefficiencies rather than drawing attention to them. This compensation is not failure, it is resilience, but resilience can also delay awareness. When the body compensates successfully, there is little reason to question how it is doing beneath the surface. Life feels manageable. Independence remains intact. There is no urgency to look closer. This is where reliance on symptoms alone can become limiting. Symptoms are no longer the first signal. They are often the last. Before discomfort appears, before function is affected in obvious ways, the body may already be asking for support in quieter forms. Slight changes in energy, small shifts in balance, subtle differences in how the mind feels throughout the day. These signals are easy to miss because they do not interrupt life, they coexist with it. Many seniors become skilled at adapting to these changes without consciously acknowledging them. They plan their days more carefully. They rest more often. They move more slowly. These adjustments feel sensible and wise. They reflect experience and self-respect, but they also normalize the changes. Over time, the baseline shifts. What once might have prompted curiosity now feels expected. This is just how mornings are now. This is just how my energy works. This is just part of getting older. There is truth in these statements. Aging does bring change, but not all change carries the same meaning. Some changes reflect natural aging, others reflect the body working harder than it needs to, quietly compensating for issues that have not yet made themselves known. Without screening, there is often no clear way to tell the difference. This uncertainty does not usually cause distress. It simply becomes part of the background. The body feels less predictable than it once did, but still dependable enough. Life continues without interruption. The danger here is not dramatic decline. It is delayed awareness. By the time symptoms finally appear, they often arrive with more weight, more disruption, more urgency. What could have been noticed gently becomes something that demands attention all at once. This is not a failure of judgment. It is a consequence of how aging bodies communicate. Many seniors have lived responsibly, cared for themselves, and stayed attentive to their health for decades. Trusting the absence of symptoms feels reasonable. It feels earned, but the body is no longer a simple messenger. It speaks in patterns now rather than alarms. Screening exists not to replace trust in the body, but to complement it, not because something is expected to be wrong, but because the body's quiet signals are easy to misinterpret. Understanding this requires a shift in perspective. Feeling fine is no longer the same as seeing clearly. This does not mean living in suspicion of one's body. It means acknowledging that the body's language has evolved. It requires a different kind of listening, one that does not wait for discomfort to demand attention. For many seniors, this realization comes slowly. It may arise after a routine check reveals something unexpected, or after hearing a story from a friend who felt fine until something changed suddenly, or simply through a growing sense that the body feels different in ways that are hard to describe. These moments do not bring fear. They bring reflection, reflection on how much has changed quietly over the years, reflection on how independence has been preserved, not by ignoring change, but by adapting to it. Screening, at its best, fits into this reflective space. It is not a reaction to symptoms, it is a response to time. Time changes how the body behaves, how it signals, how it compensates. Screening acknowledges these changes without judgment. It does not assume illness, it assumes complexity. For seniors who value dignity and autonomy, this distinction matters deeply. Screening is not about being told something is wrong. It is about understanding what is happening before it disrupts daily life. It is about staying informed rather than being surprised. This chapter is not about urgency, it is about awareness. Awareness that the body's silence does not always mean all is well. Awareness that feeling fine can coexist with changes worth noticing. Awareness that prevention begins not with fear, but with respect for how the body evolves over time. The body has carried a lifetime. It deserves to be listened to, even when it whispers. That listening, however, is not always easy. It is shaped by emotion, habit, and experience. And that is where the next chapter naturally begins. Screening is often delayed not because it feels unimportant, but because it feels complicated. For many seniors, the decision to put off screening is not a conscious rejection. It is a quiet response to experience, a response shaped by years of navigating responsibilities, appointments, obligations, and the steady effort of maintaining independence. Life has already required so much attention. Doctor visits have accumulated over decades. Medications have been adjusted. Procedures have been endured. Results have been explained, sometimes clearly, sometimes not. For many, healthcare has become familiar, but also tiring. Fatigue plays a role that is rarely acknowledged. Not physical fatigue, but emotional fatigue. The tiredness that comes from answering the same questions, scheduling appointments, waiting in rooms, and preparing for possibilities that may never arrive. Screening, in this context, can feel like adding weight to an already full load. There is also fear, though it is often understated. Fear does not always appear as anxiety. More often it appears as avoidance, a quiet preference not to know, not because bad news is expected, but because uncertainty feels easier than disruption. Knowing can feel like opening a door that cannot be closed again. For many seniors, stability matters deeply. Routines provide comfort. Predictability supports energy. Screening threatens both, not because it is dangerous, but because it introduces the unknown. Even a routine test can feel like an interruption to a carefully balanced life. There is also the belief that absence of symptoms equals absence of need. This belief feels reasonable. After all, much of life has reinforced it. When something is wrong, the body speaks. When it does not, life continues. Screening challenges this logic gently but persistently. It suggests that awareness can come before discomfort, that knowing does not require suffering. For some seniors, this idea feels unfamiliar, even unnecessary. Why go looking for something that has not announced itself? This question is not denial, it is practicality. Many seniors have learned to conserve energy, to choose carefully where attention goes. Screening can feel like an investment with unclear return, especially when everything feels stable enough. There is also the weight of past experiences. Some remember screenings that led to worry without outcome, follow-ups that revealed nothing, tests that caused stress but changed little. These memories shape present decisions. They teach caution. Others remember moments when screening led to difficult news. Even when managed well, those moments linger. They remind seniors that knowledge carries responsibility, that once something is known, it must be addressed. Addressing it requires energy, time, and emotional strength. Avoidance can feel like self-protection. There is also concern about being treated differently. Some seniors fear that screening results may change how they are seen by doctors, by family, by themselves. Labels can feel heavy. Diagnoses can overshadow identity. Even mild findings can feel like markers that redefine a person. Preserving dignity becomes a priority. Many seniors value being seen as capable, independent, and whole. Screening can feel like inviting scrutiny, even when intentions are supportive. This discomfort is rarely spoken aloud, but it influences decisions. Practical barriers also play a role. Transportation, scheduling, cost, and logistics matter. Screening requires planning. It requires aligning multiple pieces of life. When energy is limited, these practical hurdles can feel overwhelming. So screening is postponed, not indefinitely, but quietly. I'll do it later, at my next visit, when things settle down. These delays feel reasonable in the moment. Life continues. Nothing seems to change. Time passes. Screening becomes something that belongs to the future rather than the present. There is also a subtle emotional resistance to being reminded of age. Screening is often associated with later life. Being encouraged to screen can feel like being reminded that one has entered a different stage. This reminder can stir complex emotions, acceptance, mixed with reluctance. Many seniors have worked hard to adapt gracefully to aging. They have adjusted expectations, found new rhythms, learned to listen to their bodies in ways that preserve comfort. Screening can feel like a disruption to this adaptation, introducing questions that had been set aside. There is also the matter of control. Screening can feel like handing control over to systems and schedules, to tests and timelines. For individuals who have spent a lifetime managing their own lives, this shift can feel uncomfortable. Even when screening is recommended gently, it can feel directive. This discomfort is rarely about distrust. It is about autonomy, about choosing when and how to engage. Another quiet influence is comparison. Many seniors look around and see peers who are not screening, friends who feel fine, neighbors who avoid appointments. This social context reinforces the idea that screening is optional, something only needed if something feels wrong. Belonging matters. Doing what others are doing feels safe. It normalizes choice. It reduces the feeling of standing apart. Screening, then, becomes something that some people do rather than something personally necessary. All of these factors accumulate. None are dramatic on their own. Together, they create a gentle resistance that is easy to live with and hard to challenge. Screening slips out of priority without ever being consciously rejected. The decision to delay often feels wise. It feels like conserving energy, like avoiding unnecessary worry, like honoring experience. And yet, beneath this wisdom, there is often a quiet tension, a sense that avoidance may carry its own cost. This tension is rarely urgent. It surfaces in small moments after hearing a story, during a reflective pause, when noticing a change that cannot quite be explained. These moments do not force action, they invite consideration. For many seniors, the turning point is not fear but curiosity. A question arises quietly. Would knowing actually make things harder, or could it make them easier? This question does not demand immediate answers. It simply opens space for a different perspective. Screening, seen through this lens, is not about expecting problems. It is about reducing uncertainty. Uncertainty carries its own weight. It occupies mental space. It creates background worry that is difficult to name. Even when everything feels fine, uncertainty can subtly influence confidence. Avoiding screening does not eliminate uncertainty. It delays it. Understanding this does not require urgency or pressure. It requires honesty about how avoidance shapes long-term confidence, about how not knowing can feel protective but also limiting. Many seniors come to this realization gradually. They recognize that screening is not about chasing illness. It is about clarifying what is already happening quietly, about replacing assumptions with information. The shift in understanding is gentle. It does not erase hesitation, but it softens it. And when hesitation softens, something else becomes possible. Not action yet, but openness. That openness toward awareness rather than avoidance is where the emotional weight of screening begins to change, where knowing starts to feel less like a threat and more like relief. That internal shift is subtle but powerful, and it is there that the next chapter begins. There is a quiet relief that comes not from answers themselves, but from no longer carrying unanswered questions. For many seniors, the emotional weight surrounding screening has little to do with results. It has more to do with uncertainty, with the background hum of maybe that lingers when things are left unexplored. Screening, when approached thoughtfully, shifts that emotional balance in ways that are often unexpected. Knowing does not always change circumstances, but it changes how the mind carries them. Before screening, uncertainty often lives quietly in the background. It does not dominate attention. It does not cause distress, but it occupies space. A small, persistent awareness that something could be happening beneath the surface without being noticed. This awareness can subtly influence behavior. It may show up as hesitation, as second-guessing, as a vague sense that decisions carry more risk than they once did. Even when life feels stable, uncertainty can quietly undermine confidence. Screening interrupts this pattern, not with alarm, but with clarity. For many seniors, the experience of screening itself is less emotionally charged than anticipated. The fear that once surrounded it softens in the presence of routine. Tests are completed, conversations are had, results arrive, and in many cases, the results are unremarkable. This ordinariness carries its own power. It confirms that the body is functioning as expected, that quiet changes are not signs of looming problems, that adaptation does not necessarily mean decline. This confirmation brings relief. Relief not because danger has been avoided, but because uncertainty has been resolved. The mind no longer has to speculate. It no longer has to fill gaps with imagination. Clarity settles in. Even when screening reveals something that requires attention, the emotional experience is often steadier than anticipated. Knowing what is happening allows the mind to orient itself, to understand context, to move from vague concern to specific awareness. Specific awareness is easier to carry. It allows seniors to engage with information without being overwhelmed by possibility. It transforms fear into focus, focus into planning, planning into steadiness. This does not mean screening eliminates worry, it refines it. Instead of worrying about what might be happening, attention shifts to what is known. Known information, even when imperfect, feels more manageable than uncertainty. The mind responds to this shift. Thoughts become less scattered. Anxiety reduces. Mental energy once spent on quiet speculation is freed. The mind feels calmer not because everything is perfect, but because it is clearer. This clarity supports emotional balance. Many seniors described feeling lighter after screening, not because they received good news, but because they no longer carried unspoken questions. The mental space created by knowing allows attention to return to daily life. Small decisions feel easier. Plans feel more grounded. Confidence returns not as boldness, but as steadiness. Screening also changes how seniors relate to their bodies. Before awareness, the body can feel unpredictable. Changes are noticed but not understood. Sensations are interpreted cautiously, sometimes with unnecessary concern. After awareness, the body feels more familiar. Sensations are contextualized. Changes are understood within a broader picture. This understanding reduces fear and increases trust. Trust matters deeply in later life. Trust allows seniors to move through the world with confidence rather than caution alone. It supports independence. It preserves dignity. Screening, by clarifying what is happening internally, strengthens this trust. The emotional shift is often subtle. It does not announce itself as relief. It appears as ease, as less mental effort required to feel secure, as fewer moments of wondering. This ease accumulates. Over time, seniors notice they feel more grounded, less reactive to bodily sensations, more comfortable making choices without hesitation. This shift does not depend on perfect results. It depends on engagement, engagement with one's own health, not as a project to manage, but as a relationship to understand. Screening fosters this engagement quietly. It invites seniors into a conversation with their bodies that is informed rather than speculative. That conversation supports emotional resilience. Resilience in this context is not about enduring hardship. It is about maintaining balance. When uncertainty is reduced, emotional energy is conserved. Seniors have more capacity to engage with what matters: relationships, routines, pleasures, and rest. Screening then becomes less about detection and more about emotional clarity. It helps the mind let go of background tension. It supports peace of mind not through reassurance alone, but through understanding. This understanding also influences how seniors view the future. Uncertainty about health can make the future feel fragile. Knowing what is happening creates a sense of continuity. The future feels more navigable. Even when adjustments are needed, they feel purposeful rather than reactive. Purpose supports confidence. Confidence supports independence. Screening, by reducing emotional weight, strengthens both. This does not mean screening becomes something to seek constantly. It becomes something to respect, a tool for maintaining emotional equilibrium, a way to stay oriented in one's own body. For many seniors, this realization marks a turning point. Screening is no longer seen as something to fear or avoid. It becomes something that supports calm grounded in awareness. That calm changes how prevention is understood. It moves prevention away from alarm and towards support, away from fear and towards steadiness. That reframing, seeing prevention as a form of support rather than a reaction to danger, is where the story naturally continues. And that is where the next chapter begins. Prevention is often misunderstood because it is spoken about in the language of urgency. It is framed as something to do before it is too late, before problems become serious, before consequences arrive. This framing, while well-intentioned, can make prevention feel alarming, something driven by fear rather than care. For many seniors, this tone does not resonate. Life has already taught them how to respond to emergencies. They know how to act when something is wrong. What they seek now is not alarm, but support, not pressure, but steadiness. When prevention is understood differently, its role changes. It becomes less about anticipating problems and more about maintaining balance, less about fixing what is broken and more about supporting what is already working. Screening fits naturally into this quieter understanding. Rather than being a reaction to fear, it becomes a form of maintenance, like checking the foundations of a home that has stood for many years, not because it is expected to collapse, but because it deserves care. This perspective matters. When screening is framed as support, it no longer feels like an intrusion. It feels like alignment, a way of helping the body continue on its current path with fewer disruptions. The body, especially in later life, benefits from early adjustments. Small imbalances are easier to address when they are noticed early. Minor changes require less effort than major corrections. Screening allows these adjustments to happen gently, without urgency. This gentleness preserves dignity. It allows seniors to engage with their health on their own terms without being rushed or overwhelmed. It respects the body's resilience while acknowledging its changing needs. Prevention in this light is not about assuming vulnerability. It is about honoring longevity. A body that has carried decades of experience deserves thoughtful attention. Screening becomes a way of acknowledging that history not with suspicion, but with respect. This reframing also reduces emotional resistance. When prevention is not tied to fear, seniors are less likely to avoid it. It no longer feels like an invitation to worry. It feels like a choice to stay informed. Information, when presented calmly, supports confidence. Knowing what is happening allows seniors to plan thoughtfully. It reduces the likelihood of sudden changes that disrupt routines and independence. Prevention then becomes a stabilizing force. It helps maintain continuity. It supports predictability. It allows life to unfold with fewer surprises. This stability is deeply valued in later life. It supports energy management. It protects emotional balance. It reinforces a sense of control. Screening, as part of prevention, contributes quietly to this stability. It does not demand constant attention. It does not dominate daily life. It simply provides periodic insight that helps the body stay on course. This approach also changes how health conversations feel. Instead of focusing on risk, conversations shift toward note-taking, toward observation, toward gentle course correction. This tone respects seniors' experience. It acknowledges that they know their bodies well. Screening does not override that knowledge. It complements it. When prevention is approached this way, it becomes easier to integrate into life. It no longer feels like something separate or disruptive. It becomes part of how seniors care for themselves, much like rest, movement, and routine. This integration is key to sustainability. Practices that feel supportive endure. Practices that feel alarming fade away. Prevention framed as support remains relevant because it adapts to the individual. It can be adjusted, it can be revisited, it can be paced. There is no urgency in this approach, only attentiveness. Attentiveness to the body's quiet signals. Attentiveness to changes that are easier to notice with the right tools. Attentiveness to maintaining ease rather than reacting to difficulty. This attentiveness supports independence. When changes are noticed early, seniors retain more choice. They can decide how to respond. They can adjust routines thoughtfully rather than being forced into sudden changes. Choice preserves autonomy. Autonomy preserves dignity. Screening, when understood as support, reinforces both. It allows seniors to remain active participants in their own care rather than passive recipients of intervention. This participation strengthens confidence. Confidence that life can continue with intention. That the body, while changing, is still understandable. That awareness brings calm rather than fear. This understanding sets the stage for a deeper realization. Because prevention, at its core, is not about avoiding illness. It is about protecting independence. And that deeper connection between screening and autonomy is where the next chapter naturally unfolds. Independence is rarely lost all at once. It slips away gradually, often through small disruptions that arrive without warning. A sudden change in routine, an unexpected limitation, a decision that must be made quickly, without time to prepare emotionally or practically. These moments are not just inconvenient, they are destabilizing. For many seniors, the greatest concern is not illness itself. It is losing control over how life is lived. Screening, when done thoughtfully, helps protect that control. By offering early awareness, it reduces the likelihood of surprises that force sudden adjustments. It allows seniors to remain the ones making choices rather than having choices made for them. This distinction matters deeply. When change arrives unexpectedly, it often comes with urgency. Urgency limits options. It narrows decisions. It can shift power away from the individual and toward circumstance. Early awareness widens the field. It creates time to think, to ask questions, to consider preferences, time to adjust routines gradually rather than abruptly, time to involve trusted people without feeling rushed. This time preserves dignity. Dignity is not only about physical ability, it is about agency, about being consulted, about being prepared. Screening supports dignity by offering foresight without forcing action. Knowing what is happening allows seniors to plan at their own pace. It allows them to decide what matters most, how they want to live, what they want to prioritize, what support they are willing to accept. This drilling does not require pessimism. It is simply thoughtful stewardship of one's own life. Many seniors who engage in regular screening describe a sense of quiet reassurance. Not because everything is perfect, but because nothing is hidden. There is comfort in transparency, in knowing where one stands. That knowledge reduces anxiety. When uncertainty fades, mental energy is freed. Instead of worrying about what might be happening unseen, attention returns to daily life, to relationships, to interests, to presence. This mental freedom strengthens independence. A clear mind supports confident decision-making. It reduces hesitation. It supports balance, both emotional and physical. Screening also supports independence by minimizing disruption. Early adjustments tend to be smaller and more manageable. They can be woven into existing routines rather than replacing them entirely. This continuity helps seniors maintain their sense of normalcy. Normalcy matters. It anchors identity. It reinforces belonging. It sustains confidence. Sudden change, by contrast, can feel disorienting. It can challenge self-perception. It can make seniors feel like their lives are being reshaped without consent. Prevention helps avoid this rupture. By identifying shifts early, screening allows seniors to stay ahead of change rather than being overtaken by it. This proactive position feels empowering, not demanding. Empowerment in later life looks different than it once did. It is quieter, more internal, less about expansion and more about preservation. Preservation of routines that bring comfort, preservation of abilities that support autonomy, preservation of the right to choose. Screening contributes to this preservation subtly. It does not interfere with daily life. It does not impose constant vigilance. It simply provides a checkpoint, a moment of reflection that reinforces stability. This stability supports confidence in movement, in planning, in engagement. When the body feels predictable, seniors are more willing to participate, to travel, to socialize, to remain active in ways that feel meaningful. When unpredictability dominates, participation shrinks. Screening helps reduce that unpredictability. It also supports communication. When seniors are informed, conversations with family and caregivers become more balanced. There is less assumption, less urgency, less fear. Decisions can be discussed calmly, with clarity. This calm protects relationships. It prevents health conversations from becoming crisis-driven. It keeps them grounded in respect rather than worry. Independence thrives in this environment, not because challenges disappear, but because they are met with preparation rather than panic. Screening does not guarantee outcomes, but it protects process. It protects the way change is encountered. It protects the ability to remain centered when life shifts. For many seniors, this is the true value of prevention. Not extending life at all costs, but preserving the quality and authorship of the life being lived. That authorship is deeply tied to dignity. Being able to say, "I knew and I chose." Screening supports that sentence. It allows seniors to stay present, informed, and engaged without surrendering peace. This understanding naturally leads to a final question. How does one carry prevention forward without letting it become a burden? How does screening remain supportive rather than consuming? That balance between awareness and calm is where the final chapter gently rests. Prevention lasts only when it feels respectful. When screening becomes heavy, constant, or fear-driven, it loses its value. It turns from support into pressure. In later life, what endures is not intensity, but balance. Carrying prevention forward requires calm confidence. Confidence does not come from constant checking. It comes from trust in routine, trust in professionals, and trust in one's own judgment. Screening works best when it is periodic, intentional, and then released from attention until the next appropriate moment. This release is important. Seniors do not benefit from living in a state of vigilance. Life at this stage is meant to be lived, not monitored. Prevention should sit quietly in the background, not dominate the foreground. Screening, when held correctly, does exactly that. It becomes a scheduled pause rather than an ongoing concern, a moment of reflection rather than a source of worry. Once completed, it allows the mind to return fully to daily life. This rhythm preserves peace. Peace comes from knowing that nothing important is being ignored, while also knowing that nothing urgent is being demanded. It allows seniors to move forward without carrying unseen questions. Calm confidence also comes from reframing purpose. Screening is not about searching for problems. It is about confirming stability. It is about reassurance as much as detection. Often, the result is not change, but affirmation. That affirmation matters. It strengthens trust in the body. It reinforces the sense that life is on course. It quiets doubts that might otherwise linger. Even when screening suggests adjustment, calm confidence remains possible. Because awareness arrived early, responses can be measured. There is time to consider options without urgency, time to involve others thoughtfully, time to choose rather than react. This pacing protects dignity. Dignity in later life is closely tied to how change is handled. Being rushed undermines confidence. Being informed restores it. Carrying prevention forward with respect also means honoring limits. Not every screening is appropriate for every person. Needs change. Priorities shift. What matters most is alignment with one's values, comfort, and stage of life. Respect includes saying no when something no longer serves. That choice is not neglect, it is discernment. Seniors who carry prevention wisely tend to see it as part of self-care rather than obligation. It sits alongside other supportive habits: rest, movement, nourishment, connection. It does not compete with life. It supports it. Over time, prevention becomes familiar rather than intimidating. It loses emotional weight. It becomes simply one of the ways seniors stay engaged with their own well-being. This engagement fosters steadiness. Steadiness allows life to be lived with fewer interruptions, fewer surprises, fewer abrupt shifts. It allows attention to remain where it belongs, on meaning, relationships, and presence. Screening, then, finds its rightful place, not as a source of fear, not as a constant concern, but as a quiet companion, a companion that checks in occasionally, offers reassurance, and then steps back. This balance allows seniors to move forward without carrying unnecessary burden. It allows prevention to coexist with peace. And peace in later life is not passive, it is earned. It is the result of thoughtful choices, gentle awareness, and respect for the life already lived. Screening, when approached this way, honors that life. It protects independence without demanding attention. It supports dignity without imposing urgency. It offers clarity without stealing calm. And with that clarity in place, seniors are free to do what matters most: to live fully, to choose deliberately, to move forward with confidence, not because everything is certain, but because nothing important is being ignored. That is the quiet strength of prevention. And that is where this story rests,